Hello and welcome to another episode of Leader Generation brought to you by ModUp. I'm your host, Tessa Burg. Today I am joined by Kevin Purvis. He is the managing partner at Cothrom Risk and Insurance Services. And today we're going to dive into one of our favorite subjects, and that is all about risk, cybersecurity, data security, and why marketers should be concerned. And I'm being a little sarcastic, if you can't tell. I know we recently had 2 episodes on responsible use, but today we're going to get into the nitty-gritty as to what you as marketers should really focus on. We know from recent reports from rooters and risk strategists that 80% of businesses are very concerned that their insurance may not cover specific losses. And this is directly related to emerging risks from artificial intelligence. We also know from very different reports specific to marketing that over 90% of us as marketers are using AI in our daily work with or without training, with or without the knowledge of our executive and C-suite. So if you are a marketing leader and you manage any size of team, your team is using AI, and that is opening up your business for risk. So why is this important? More than ever, there are rising costs of insurance, rising claim costs, and as with any technological advancement, there are people who are looking to use this technology in dangerous and not great ways for their own advantage. So Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. This is obviously a topic that is near and dear to my heart because as an agency, not only do we want to protect our business, but also that of clients. So we appreciate your time.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So before we jump in, first tell us a little bit about yourself and Cothrom Risk and Insurance Services.
Sure. We're a boutique firm in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We focus on innovation businesses, so a lot of technology, life science, med tech, advanced manufacturing, and what we call the commercial middle market space. I've been doing this now for 18 years and always in this venue. And so a lot of experience with emerging risk and particularly technology risks such as AI.
Well, the areas you cover really are very similar to the verticals we serve at ModUp. So I think this will be a very important episode for our clients. Let's start with, what are the biggest risks marketers face today and how can they mitigate them?
Sure. A lot of this is, again, going to be focused around what we generally call media liability, which can be issues related to copyright, infringement, defamation, slander. But it continues to evolve, and there's some new things out there. Actually, there's an old new thing. So many people have tried to use pixel tracking to get a little bit more data on their clients. Some attorneys have figured out how to use the Video Privacy Protection Act of 1988, which prohibited people from tracking who was watching video in this arena with the internet. And so this has become a big litigation issue. So pixel tracking right now is a very big concern for insurers and is ended up with a lot of litigation and a lot of expenses. There's some very public cases out there right now for hundreds of millions of dollars.
Oy.
Yeah.
When we think about that consumer privacy, GDPR, CCPA, are those impacting marketing strategies? Are you seeing businesses and marketers take a different approach because of those new compliance standards? Well, GDPR has been around a while, but CCPA specifically.
Yes, people need to pay attention to this and they need to make some changes. And it's not just the CCPA. Illinois has put through a couple of different ones. Now, they might not be directly as applicable to marketing with the bioinformation and the genetic information privacy acts there, but this is going to continue to domino in the United States and elsewhere. Brazil, Japan all have frameworks around privacy as well. And so it's an absolute must that you pay attention to this. Otherwise, you are potentially facing a lot of regulatory fines and issues. In many cases, insurance will respond. They'll help you defend it. but there are going to be very frequent times when insurance is legally cannot cover the fines and penalties that are assessed by a government regulatory body as a result of these violations. So there's a limit to the amount of protection in certain cases that you can obtain for this. So it's something that marketers need to pay attention to.
Yes. And for marketers who might not be familiar with the acronym CCPA, it is the California Consumer Privacy Act, and it is already in effect. And it basically gives consumers the right to know what data businesses are collecting on them and opt out. And it applies to any company doing business in California. And the doing business part is pretty broad. So if you have a website and people are interacting on it and you don't exclude or somehow magically doubly ensure that people are not coming to your website from California, because even if you can see their IP, that's not always accurate. So you need to assume that the CCPA applies to you. And we have found that a lot of clients, especially in the marketing department, aren't able to actually describe the type of data that they're collecting on users, much less have processes and protocols in place to delete it. Something that I think is really important for marketers as we move forward is making sure that you have that in place, but also really starting to think about what is the value of collecting that data in the first place. We work with a lot of B2B companies. We have a very large performance marketing wing. We, of course, are always looking to make sure we're delivering and optimizing toward that conversion right message at the right time in B2B and list building and list targeting. But this could be a whole other episode, so I won't get into it. But with the advent of AI, there are other ways to build community with your target audiences and optimize around a very transparent exchange of data and behavior that you can target on. And with the rising cost of insurance, with the rising awareness from consumers and just general clients in general, wanting to be more protective of their data, it's one great next step is just to really start looking at how valuable is the data that you're using, and is there another way to reach people in a way that's more transparent to them. So I just want to, call that, because I think about the CCPA all the time, but definitely this is not top of mind for busy marketers who are creative and constantly thinking of new ways to connect with their audience. So I wanted to also look at the role in partnerships. So as I just mentioned, I know this isn't top of mind for marketers, but who should they be working with within their business? And is there a need for CMO and marketing leaders to start exposing more about what they're doing to other leaders in the company?
Absolutely. That's something we try to do as a brokerage quite regularly. Is most insurance brokers are connected to the CFO for the organization. But in today's environment, we need to be connected to more than just the CFO. We need to be connected to your CIO or your CTO, whatever the nomenclature is you're using there. And the same, it would be great to have a conversation with the CMO or whoever is at the top of the marketing to understand what the organization is doing, the tools that it's using. We're going to delve into AI just a little bit more down the road, but as that evolves, that increases the potential for risk. Influencers. If you're utilizing influencers on a regular basis, what's the risk to them? What's the risk to you for the content that gets posted? So it's good to have these conversations, and it usually starts with getting the CFO involved and broadening the group.
Yeah, I love that point, because the CFO in a lot of ways can be your friend. Like, they are looking at controlling those premiums, and the more you can do as a company, not only to be aware of regulations that exist, but talking about the tools that you're using, the training you're providing your team, and the education you're giving them around responsible use. Because again, your team is using AI. It's just, are you training them on how to be responsible with it? But when you start to show evidence of that level of effort, when it becomes more top of mind, it also creates creativity and creative solutioning for how can this become a differentiator for your business. So you mentioned pulling in the CFO, even the CTO, CIO. I think that a lot of times those leaders sometimes don't understand like the true value of marketing, but at least showing them like, here's the type of data we're collecting. This is how we're using it. I've seen some really awesome solutions come out from those cross collaboration sessions where they can give advice on how to do it more efficiently, more cost effectively, and potentially even introduce resources to help with some automation of the more tedious aspects of research and data collection.
If your organization is large enough, you have a risk manager, then you've got another partner to bring into the fold as well. If not, the CFO has the risk manager hat, and he's ultimately responsible for the balance sheet. So if understanding what the company is doing and the risks that it creates is important to him in order to protect that balance sheet and make sure they have the appropriate insurance in place.
Yep, could not agree more. So let's say something does go wrong. So you've taken the steps to educate your staff, you're collaborating across the business, but now, there's been a data breach or you have discovered some improper use of data and that became public. And it's almost always unintentional. Like the marketing department did not know that this was the unintended consequence.
Mhm.
What are the next steps when we're in this crisis management phase?
Sure. We've come a long ways for insurance in the last 18 years that I've started, to the point that any business of any size has a cyber insurance policy. And that cyber insurance policy is going to address two key sides to it. One is going to be network security, and the other side is going to be privacy liability. So if there's a breach of data as a result of some of this marketing or the content that you have, that's going to be the first place that you're going to go to. And those carriers are specialized in responding to these types of incidences. So they'll often have a breach coach as one of the key services that they provide. So when the incident happens, you can reach out to this breach coach. Often you can reach out to them at 2 a.m. on a Friday. Because that's a lot of times when hackers like to get active on systems while the weekend nobody's around for the weekend. But the breach coach will help the organization handle this process, both from a practical standpoint of addressing your IT systems to an outward PR, public relations management, if you need that. How do you get the messaging out? How do you without causing damage to your organization or minimizing the damage that could potentially be caused to your organization? So reaching out to the insurer, filing the claim, and getting the support that the different services that they offer is key.
And I feel like staff always become much more engaged and aware after a crisis has happened. But do you have any examples that are super public that marketers could point to try and get that engagement early so that people better understand the potential consequence of not acting in a responsible manner and not taking some of these rules and regulations seriously?
Sure, absolutely. One of the examples is Chick-fil-A and the pixel tracking that I mentioned, where they were showing videos on their website, but they also had a pixel tracker on that, and they're facing significant litigation out of that. Not necessarily directed to marketing, but Amazon has very publicly known used a recruiting tool designed to streamline their HR process. But in the training set that they were utilizing, it was male resume heavy. And as a result, during the recruiting process, it had a bias towards males, and they had immediately shut that down as soon as they realized what was happening. But there are, these things happen to large public companies, but they also happen to, smaller and mid-sized private businesses on a regular basis. So
Um,
go ahead.
I was going to say, and I think the key is knowing when we say responsible use is that it encapsulates, do people understand how to evaluate outputs for bias? Do you understand where the data came from and the quality of that data? And do you understand your rights to the output, copyright of that output? Do you own it? Does the machine which generates it own it? So we're talking about like, make sure people understand how to be safe and responsible, but there's quite a few different lanes. And I really like that those examples are two different examples. And it also speaks to why you need to collaborate with different people at the leadership level, because it even spans different domains of expertise.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about how this is just going to become more important and riskier as we move forward. So we look at the future. What are the additional AI risks that we should be aware of?
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of AI and what it's going to be able to do for organizations and for the future. But if you build a house, there's a risk of fire. It's out there. That doesn't mean we're not building houses. Houses are wonderful things, but then we go out and we have the insurance, right? So we just need to be aware of the risks that are out there. But I am excited about the AI future. AI bridges a gap between what we have in our industry, two different insurances. We have a technology errors and omissions typically, which addresses when your software doesn't work right. An accounting software that messes up the numbers, causes financial harm to someone. That's a pretty straightforward risk right there. And then you have media liability, which addresses a lot more of the intellectual property oriented risk, the copyright infringement and so on along those lines. And AI is bridging the two of these. And so, how do you address that risk there? There's also some other policies out there that address different risks, such as bias and discrimination in an employment practices liability policy that could be as a result of inappropriate hiring practices, or it could even infect your customers, and those policies could respond. And because of that, insurers try to avoid a duplication of coverage. And so an errors and omissions policy has exclusions for bias and discrimination. It has exclusions for intellectual property infringement. It has exclusions for regulatory violations. So how do you protect against those if you're utilizing AI services? And that's something that you have to work on an individual basis with your broker to make sure that if you need a media liability policy and you need a technology errors and omissions policy or not, are those dovetailed together? It changes dramatically if you are a marketing firm that's then utilizing these services for your clients, or are you just you're a manufacturer or a retailer or a restaurant group, and then you're using services provided by others. Those are going to change your needs, and marketers are going to need a more robust insurance program than possibly a manufacturer of products was going to need.
Well, Kevin, this has been some very helpful information, and I hope that marketers take it seriously, but also, to your point, are excited about what is possible in the future when we have these guardrails in place. If listeners want to reach out to you and learn more about, if they're covered, better understand what they can be doing in their organization to decrease their risk and manage it better, where can they find you?
Sure. Again, my name is Kevin Purvis. That's P as in Paul, U R, V as in Victor, I, S as in Sam. And we're at Cothrom Risk. Cothrom is COTHROM.com, Cothrom.com. We're pretty easy to get a hold of. And my number is 754-312-5407. 754-312-5407.
Awesome. And before we go, any closing thoughts or anything that we missed in this interview that you want to maybe make a prediction about 2025 and risk, or leave us with a last word of advice as we look forward to this new year?
Oh, I'm excited for the next generations of the chat GPTs and other large language models. They're going to continue to see explosive growth. That's going to be and their use capabilities are going to expand dramatically. The only real downside, I think, at this point in time is the energy consumption. Can they figure out how to address the energy consumption of them? But the growth and the continued use is just going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree. We are right now looking at how we increase our adoption of large language models in the agency, like business unit by business unit, but with limitations. Like, are we going to, like, on free versions right now, there's already limits you on the number of prompts, and really starting to be intentional about the value of use in certain types of prompts. And the energy thing, like, quite honestly, like, really freaks me out. Like, I know there's a lot of companies working on it, but in the meantime, when you get really good at using ChatGPT, it's hard not to want to use it for everything. So I think it's a really good point. And, it's something as an agency, I think we're going to start to build into our trainings, is not just how, like, using AI, but how to use it in a way where we're thinking about the value that we're getting for the cost, and not just the cost of the business, the cost to the environment.
Yes.
Well, thank you again for joining us, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon. If you want to find more episodes of Leader Generation, you can visit us at modop.com. That's MODOP.com. And you can find us at podcasts. We are also available wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to find me on LinkedIn, it's Tessa Burg, TESSABURG. And until next time.
Thank you.